All right, want to say welcome to one and all to another Aaron I Never Knew TV live reasoning here. We have Eva Brito, straight from Massachusetts. She is a uh, author, licensed social worker, poet, founder of Soul Calling Retreats. Eva, what's going on?
Peace and blessings, brother. Honored to be here and build with you. So thank you for having me.
No, serious thing. I'm glad to have you here too. And we want to get right into it. One of the topics we want to discuss is I think very timely. If I want to say a very timely topic, making authentic connections in an inauthentic world, right? We spoke previously about making authentic connections. First of all, what would you consider an authentic connection?
Thank you. Thank you. Um, well, authentic, being authentic is something that's really important to me. It's actually one of my pillars as I move through life. I have different pillars that when making a decision, I'm always thinking about these pillars. And one of my pillars is authenticity. And for me, authenticity is, are you being authentic with your true self, right? And are you following your life purpose? Are you being guided in the way that you need to be? Or are you being derailed? So when I think about authenticity, actually, soul calling retreats came from an authentic place. It was around COVID, and like everyone else, we were in our houses thinking, and I decided to do a fast and really go inward and do the work. And my spirit said, create a space of healing, create a space of healing for women in nature. So, talking about authentic connections, that's really where it came from, an authentic place, and how we can build one another. And I think when we talk about authentic connections, we're in the season of restoration right now. There's a lot of pain in this world, there's a lot of people that are lost. So, people are looking for spaces they can be authentic, spaces they can be liberated and feel free, because so often, as we know, we have to put some time mask, code switch, shift to fit in different places. So authenticity is really where soul calling retreats came out of. Is a place of, and it was that year. Part of my calling was really listen to spirit. So I said, I'm going to create this space, and knowing that everything that comes from the space is coming from an authentic place. So authenticity is really something that I live by. If it's not authentic to who I am, then I can't co-sign it. I can't be part of it. So that's definitely, and I think a lot of people are looking for that right now, that authentic place.
No, I definitely think. And like how would you make an authentic connection though, like with another person in this environment? It seems very tricky, you know.
Mm. Well, I I think there's a lot of factors in that. I think it's coming from self and being grounded, like I said, and who you are. What I can tell you in creating an authentic connection with soul calling retreats, one of my pieces in that was that it had to be in a space where we could connect with nature. Because I think that's one of the ways that we can really, nature is our home, that's our source of wisdom. So when you can connect with nature, you're connecting to your authentic self. So it had to be in nature. It had to infuse um, also different practices, different healing practices, bringing in multiple generations of folks doing ceremony, bringing in the chanting, bringing in the breath work, the prayer, those kind of things. So that those are things that you can't deny when you connect with self and you connect with nature in those ways. I don't believe that you can be inauthentic in those places. And that's what I've experienced with Soul Calling Retreat, is really taking those layers out and saying, because real recognizes real. When you put people in spaces where they can take away those layers and say, we're here to really build, we're really to um, look at where we're at in life, that's where that authenticity begins to fall, to come through.
Yeah. All right then. And you mentioned importance of being in nature, right?
Mhm.
Can you share for those who are unaware of the importance of being in nature?
Sure. Like I said, nature is our home, it's our first home, and we are nature. Like in the retreats, a lot of it is based on the elements, earth, air, and fire, which are all. within us, right? We're connected with the earth. We are fire and our heat and our breath in the air and the water that flows through us. So we are nature, and there's this divine intelligence within nature. And when we connect with these elements, that's when we become the alchemist and really go into those spaces. So I always use the elements as part of my guidance in creating these retreats. And there's so much wisdom that comes from nature and studies that talk about nature. For instance, actually, where I met you in Philly in the 1970s, a they had done some research, and I think it's Paleo or Pio Hospital out in Philly, but some individuals that had gallbladder surgery, those that were placed in a room in which they had a window were able to recover a lot faster, had less pain, depression than those in the room that didn't have a window. So there's so much, and there's so much now with forestry and all this stuff. But our ancestors knew this. There's these trees; they've been here way before us, right? And they know so much within them and everything within nature. Um, there's this divine intelligence within nature. So often we think that there's all this new technology out there, and that's the new source of knowledge. But when we think of nature, it never gets it wrong. There's not a tree that you plant and it's going to plant something else. It's not like you plant a mango tree and it's going to give you a coconut or something. It's like this divine intelligence. So I feel like when we get into that nature, it just does half the work for us of one, getting our body to rest and go in the cycadic rhythms of the earth. One, getting us to really connect in different ways with nature and finding that wisdom. I think of the expansion that nature brings with us too. Like when you look at the ocean, right? There's no way you can't feel expansive. And not only in the metaphor and how you think and so forth, but literally, like when you wake up and you look at nature, your eyes expand, your breath is expanding, as opposed to you wake up and you look at the phone. So not only in the physiology of it, but in all aspects of it, it's the spiritual aspects of it. And some African traditions is that you can't talk about healing if you're not talking about nature. It just
Right.
doesn't go together.
No facts, and I'm a person who walks a lot, and walking
Mm-hmm.
really calms me down. And recently, me and the family went away, and I was chilling on the beach, and I wasn't even meditating days here. I was just sitting there, and it was so calming, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just being there outside early with the rising sun. So nature definitely has a vibe, and it definitely has an impact on all aspects of the human body, and we do recommend anyone tuned in, if you're not getting to nature, we recommend that you do the most basic way you can do if you're inland like most people is just go for a walk.
And we think about nature too. It's been used as something as a tool as a way to repress us too. I mean, you think about um, during apartheid, they took them away from nature, from places that they were surrounded by trees and all this nature, and put them in barren places in concrete settings in which they didn't have nature, right? And the Native Americans, they put them in spaces that were less conducive to nature. Even COVID, it's like the folks that did the best or survived it in many ways is because they had access to fresh air. They had access to go for a walk, right? That's when we really took the privilege of going for a walk for granted sometimes. So nature it's a healing tool, and some people have used it in history to take us away from what we know to be our healer.
We had a guy on here, a legendary architecture called Rob Knox or Rod Knox. Apologize for the mistake of the name if I did, but he was breaking down how like living by dilapidated buildings messes with you mentally, and just the
Mm-hmm.
whole like being around ugly art, not ugly architecture, but how do you say it? Like kind of the measurements are off, like not properly, I guess, structured architecture meshes with the psyche, and that coincides with just being surrounded by buildings. You just don't do too well.
Right, I can see that. It's if we go by the cycadic rhythms of the earth, you're off balance with
Yeah.
that, right? You know, um, I recently saw this documentary on Gaia on sacred geometry, And I feel like ever since seeing that, it kind of blew my mind and made me look at nature in a different way. And I'm already a nature lover. Like I love
Yeah,
hugging trees and all that. But it just said, when you look at leaves and you look at tree branches and it looks like synapses of the brain, and you look at our hair, it's like you start to see nature in so many different things, the Fibonacci swirl and different things. So I was like, wow, like I was looking at that leaf and looking at,
yeah,
think about lightning and how it looks like, the inside of um, the nuclei and so forth, and looking at the brain. So it's like nature. It's always connected, and sometimes we put it in these categories, but it's always there if we really take a look at it, and within sacred geometry.
a serious thing there. Next topic we're going to talk about is the next topic we want to talk about the benefits of breath work, right? But before we talk about the benefit of breath work, can you tell people what breath work is?
Hmm. Sure. Breath work, that's the bridge, that's the life force within us, right? It's our source of connection to spirituality. Breath work embodies energy, and some people, in different traditions refer to it as chi or prana in various traditions, but it's the flow of air and life force within us, and that anchors us physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's our sense of groundedness. And if we go back to the piece with the elements, it's connecting to the elements too, right? Sometimes if you really want to connect with the earth element, you might have that slow breath, right? To have stability and grounding. And if you're going to really think about the water element and you want to go with the flow, maybe just like the circadian rhythms of the water, or that fire breath that's more energized and passionate and really having um, that kind of heat to it. So there's different kind of breaths depending on where you're at, and it tells you where you're at. If you're having these shallow breaths, it's evidence that you're usually in a state of fight or flight. Or if you're having, more of a deep breath, then you start to calm down, and it shifts the sympathetic nervous system, that governs that fight or flight response. So it's always telling us where we're at, but it's also a connection with the divine. That's how we get into that space of meditation, right? Is through those deep breaths. And when I think of breath, like someone that's an expert in breath work was Brett Lockett. He attended one of our retreats, our men's retreat, and he does more that fire breath, that rapid breath.
Yeah, yeah,
And I thought that would have been a really good piece for the men's retreat. I mean, it's good for any gender, but it really, I did it because I always bet anyone that's going to be in it. And then the men that did it, it was really powerful for many of them, because we're able to literally release many things that we hold on to, the trauma in our bodies, and through that breath. Like after the breath work, some of the men were like, if you see the video that has the testimonial, like, years of things I was holding, one of the brothers says, after that breath work. So breath has the ability to take away things that we don't even know we have sometimes, and it has ability to transform us and bring us to places that we don't even know as well, or explore different places.
and also, man, I'm glad you said that because it definitely helps you to what I experience, at least I could say, is that it does reveal a lot of things to you. I don't know if it's the common of the body fight, I don't know if it's the connection, but it reveals a lot of things to you. But also it helps you look at things from a different perspective, from a heightened perspective, when you deal with breath work, when you deal with meditation. So anyone listening, we do encourage you. I think when people hear meditation, they get discouraged. They think it has to be some great thing like on top of a mountain with your hands like this and all that. And that's not the case. You can literally just get a little breathing pattern and just try to settle yourself. Um, how long have you been doing breath work personally?
um, how long have I been doing breath work? I think it's, I would say the last 5, 10 years, I've been really more into it,
Yeah,
and really studying and looking at different types of breath work. But to your point, sometimes just like taking 3 deep breaths before you do something, even with like our kids or something, it's like, all right, let me take a breath before, I say
facts.
something. Or how many folks, are in wish they took a breath before making an action, and perhaps a behind bars or somewhere else, just because that one breath could have gave you that moment to say, now let me just step back for a moment, or let me not say this. So the power of one breath is immense.
Yes, a great tool that people need to utilize, because it um is very revealing in a sense when you get in that space and you really start practicing, And I mentioned perspective earlier, but it really does change your perspective because, as you said, you take a breath and you really say, like, man, it's not that serious, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, definitely a vibe. All right, so another topic we want to talk on, and this aligns with what you do with the retreat. When we speak about meditation, a lot of times it's an individual thing. It's just you, but you recommend doing meditations in groups. All right. Can you share the benefits you have observed or experienced by doing meditation or meditating with a group compared to
Definitely.
doing the individual most people do?
Yeah, meditation, as like you said, whether it's individual or within a group, it's always a great thing. But, as people of African descent, our healing has been always communal. I think it's in, I forget the language, they don't have a word for orphanage. I mean, for orphan, because every child is part of the community. So African healing and spirituality rarely is it individual. So if we're really going to be talking about healing, it has to be communal. So there's a power in us meditating together and us healing, because our injuries have been collective as we think about our history. So our healing has to be collective. We think about ceremonies, it's always a people coming together, chanting, singing, hugging, dancing together. So through our collective energies is how we heal as a people of African descent, in my opinion. And then there's a power in that, right? In a group meditation, one individual comes in with their energy, another individual comes with their energy, and there's this synergy that starts to begin. And we think about the law of oneness, right? That we're all interconnected. So if you are feeling something, a sense of loneliness and connect, someone else can support that. And there's also this power in hearing each other's stories in that, because so often we hear something or we experience something and we think it's our own. It's like, the struggle is real for me as this, as that. No one can really relate. But when you hear someone else, I'm going through it too, you're like, oh, wow, okay, it's not just me. So there's a power in sharing each other's story in that place. Um, and group meditations, like I mentioned, with the connectedness, that African spirituality of Ubuntu, I am because we are. That's the essence of who we are as a people of African descent. So when we're meditating together, it's deepening that unity. It's collective joy. It's collective sadness. But if you're sad by yourself, but if I'm sad and together we unite, that sadness starts to dissipate a little, because there's a unity there that fosters that understanding and our divine connection. So I definitely know that there's a power in our meditating together. It's always amazes me how you feel that energy in the room when, people come together. It's like that amplified peace that comes with that. So that collective energy amplifies in many ways when we create that powerful spiritual field. So I definitely think as African people, it's always about doing it together.
And what would you recommend for people in different areas tuned in? How would you go about finding a safe space to have that experience or creating it yourself amongst your peers?
I mean, I definitely think, there's different circles. You may have a circle already of sister friends or brothers or people that you can build with. And if you don't, putting that intention out there, because when you put it out there, it's like, how sometimes you say, I really want to learn about this. And then you meet someone the next day, it's like, oh, yeah, I do this, come through. So
Factual.
I feel like, putting that intention out there and being diligent about also doing the research, because I'm sure there are different spaces as well that have that kind of um, and it goes back to that word of authenticity, being authentic to yourself, and trusting that there's others out there that are authentic and can have that. Sometimes it's putting it out there in whatever means you do that. If it's social media, it's your groups, your church, and saying who are who would like to, maybe go out somewhere to a park and let's just have a meditation circle or do a session together. It's so often, sometimes we got to create. We're creative beings, right? If it's not there, then we create it. So Call and Retreat didn't exist before, but I felt there was a need and I saw the vision. So I said, at first I was like, I don't know if anyone's going to come, but it was successful and people continue to come. But sometimes you create it if it doesn't exist.
And for those listening, right, can you explain to them like what would a meditation circle look like? What would be the components if they wanted to replicate it and do it in their local area?
So I think, I think about the gathering that you had about the grounding. I think that's important. I think one, finding a space that resonates with you is important. Like the space that I do the retreats, I went down that land and I felt like I could feel the energy of that land, the sacredness of that land. And I knew that's where I want to do it. So you definitely want to do it in a space that you feel there's a connection there, one. Um, Also setting the space, I always connect with the ancestors and asking for their blessings, asking for their presence to be there prior to whoever's going to be in that space. So setting that space in whichever ways that you feel is right, but connecting with and bringing in the elements, bringing the fire element, bringing the water. I put the elements there as part of it. So there's that sacred, creating the sacred space of folks. I also think there's power in having elders and having a multi-generation. If you can have an elder, someone there to bless the space, it's important. Um, and part of bringing in that ceremony piece, whether it's chanting, setting an intention, setting a prayer, different people have different perspectives on what that looks like, but making sure that praise is sacred and has that circle prior to is important. I think sometimes we take away that, okay, we're just going to do this. And like, no, it's never like that. It's always about the intentionality, the sacredness of creating that space. And then, if you're someone that already has that background, or not, finding the place, the people that have it. Like I said, if I'm going to put someone that does breath work, I'm going to make sure that I've done a session with them. I feel comfortable. It's kind of like mi casa tu casa. I'm not going to bring you somewhere that I don't feel is, if it's not good enough for me, it's not good enough for you. So being diligent about the highest and best always is how I operate and how others should operate as well.
And during the reason, I heard you mention the elders numerous times. Have you always been a person that kind of had energy for elders, or this is something you kind of gravitated towards as you begin to learn more?
I mean, I think I've always been an old soul. I remember when I was a little girl and my neighbor next door, and she had someone that we live in Massachusetts, so she was her daughter would come from California, and I used to love talking to the grandmother. So I feel like there was always I loved always talking to old people that had the wisdom. So I think there's a beauty in that, having that knowledge and wisdom of folks that can tell you stories about times before. And I also want to preface this because I know I've heard this conversation, not every old person, quote unquote, is an elder, right? Like, so
Facts, facts. We need
there's
that
some older
disclosure, you know.
folks that perhaps they may not be the person you want them to lead because they may have made some choices that you would not want others to make, or to reflect in alignment what you think is the righteous path, quote unquote. So, but I think in having someone that has the wisdom and can share that knowledge. When we had the men's retreat, I actually invited an elder, and he was 90 years old. 90 years old.
Yeah.
An activist in the community, had done a lot of work and had a lot of life experience. So when someone can speak to another brother that's younger and say, I've been there, I understand the struggle. It's different now because you have a different perspective, but I understand the path. And so I think there's a lot of power in that. There's a reassurance in that too, that it feels like, okay, I got someone that has my back in this knowledge. So I think that there's an importance in that. And I think that multi-generation piece is being lost a lot of times, that folks kind of discard our elders in some ways. So I think it's important to have that.
And all right, so you have to touch on this, the multi-generational piece, right? Me and my Breakgen Far Right, we did we produced a tune, a rhythm, and we called it a generation gap. And we had
Mm,
like, different generations. But can you speak about the importance of the interaction between multiple generations
mm.
in a specific setting?
I mean, there's the African proverb that, when an elder dies, it's like a library being burned, right? So there's so much knowledge and wisdom in some of our elders, right, that we don't get. And even, my mom was a educator for 20 years back home, Cape Verde Islands, where I was from. And one year we went, and I always knew she was an educator. She told me, but one year we went back home, and she showed us the classroom she was in. It was like a small classroom, and I was like, whoa! And she started to tell us all these stories. So I think a part of it is like digging in, because sometimes you might be like, oh, so and so was this, but we're
Right.
never one thing, right? You're not
Right.
just a podcaster. You're not just a teacher. We're so dynamic and has so many different parts of us. So I think it's kind of digging in and finding out what was that like, or what is this part of it. What was it like during the '60s to have this, or to go in places where they said only this people were allowed, or this and that. So I think it's an importance to kind of get the real flavor, kind of we get the little intricacies of what that's like. Because sometimes you say, okay, this is grandpa, he was this and he was that. Like, nah,
Mhm.
that's a whole life. That's a whole
Facts,
library of
facts, facts, facts.
stories. Um, and, and trying to find the connections that might be there. Maybe it's the music thing, maybe you're into music, but their music was so different. But how did that
Yeah.
impact their generation? So finding something, I think that there's a link, because sometimes it's like there's no link, but there's always a link. We're interconnected beings. There's always a link. It's just doing the work to find that link and seeing how that can impact your world or your perspective.
And I highly recommend everyone listening, if you don't have an elder in your life, be diligent and search out for one, because I'm telling you, they're what's the term they use? Invaluable.
Mm.
I think I turned out the way that I am because I spent a lot of time around old heads, tell you the truth, and they put me on a lot of stuff and broke down stuff so I could avoid a lot of things. And listen too.
Mhm.
That's the next thing. Just don't listen, but apply what they say if it's actually good information.
Yeah,
You
there's
know
a lot of
that
blind spots that you could you could take
yeah
out the
that
way.
that application of information is very very important. Um, so what we're gonna do right now is, what is the time? All right. So first of all, we give thanks for everyone tuned in to this
Mm.
reasoning here, and if anyone has a question, uh, aligned with the topics we discussed here tonight, please put it in the chat. And while we're waiting too, right? I um I wanted to jump back to the connection between the nature and the breath work.
Hmm.
Um I've only been doing like my meditation and my breath work for about a year. It's been a total game changer. But what I realized is, because you mentioned earlier in regards to just tapping into the source, it's really real. I don't know the science behind it, but it's very real, because I think that, like, maybe because you calm yourself or you quiet the mind. And I want to clear up this quiet the mind thing. It's not like everything's blocked out for an hour period. I just want to be clear about that. But things are just a little more calmer. Depends to the recent mind. But um, that connection that you get and the revelation that you experience really helps you transform uh the understanding of yourself and the understanding of others. I had one person referred to me as like spiritual alchemy, in a sense that you start to change. But breathwork plays a big role in that, and it's something that everyone should be doing. And if you're not doing it, I highly recommend that you give it a try.
And you speaking to that breath work piece, to me, I think when we go into meditation and we really tap into that breath work, it's really an opportunity to go back home, like to be in that space of
Yeah,
expansionness.
yeah,
That I think that's where we come from. Like, it's like, oh, okay, this is an opportunity, because this reality is really not real. So I'm like, okay, this is
yeah.
this is really where it's at, when there's no limits, right? We come
Facts.
from a space that we didn't have this limitation, and sometimes we feel like there's something that's not right. And then when you go
Mhm.
there to have that, there's anything can exist, and there's
Yeah.
nothing that can stop us. That universal mindset, that's the expansion that I think we all thrive on, and that's where you can really get that.
And while we're waiting here for a question, could you give people the full breakdown of your retreat, or of the retreat?
Sure. So soul calling retreats is, we do soul calling retreats out here in Massachusetts, and we do it in other parts. And the intention of soul calling retreats is really defined a sacred space, liberated spaces that we can really connect with our truth and our higher self. It started off as only for women, creating a space in nature where we can have a day of self reflection, connecting with the elements through various arts, through various expressive arts, whether it's movement, because there's so much knowledge in our bodies, and releasing that in this liberate, if you see one of our videos, just moving our bodies and dancing together, such a beautiful thing. Through connecting fire throughout time, we've always sat around the fire, so we end around the fire, and using different indigenous practice, whether it's sound healing, whether it's breath work, whether it's the arts, to connect with one another. And many of the folks that have attended it always say that it's a powerful experience, and it really brings them home. And it started off just for women, but after the first one, some of the women there asked us to do the same thing for our brothers, for the men in their lives, for their husbands, for their sons. So I was called to, I was asked to do that, and I went back to prayer and meditation. And I said, okay, if we're really going to be about healing, then it's about the whole community. And many of these women went back to their partners, their husbands, their boyfriends, and they couldn't really have that same experience because they wasn't there. So it's the same. So we created essentially the same thing for the men. And it's funny because one of the things you had asked me before was, how different is the men's retreat from the women's retreat? And it's really, in terms of design, not different, because it goes back to that point of we're more similar, I think, than we are. We're more similar than we think. Sometimes we get so caught up in that we're different because men need this and women need that. I think the conversations sometimes are different because men are talking about different things. But in terms of design, we all need that meaningful connection. And it's through the arts is one of the best ways to do that, in my opinion, because now you're having that connection with the divine through a whole body, whole mind experience. When you really tap in, you can tap in through that connection through meditation, but you can also tap in through music, through movement in different ways. And everyone's different. So some people really like the movement piece. Some people really like the meditation piece. Some people really like, creating things with their hands. So depending on how you connect better, we do different modalities as part of soul calling retreats. So that's a little bit about soul calling retreats. If you go to the website, ivabrito.com, you can see the soul calling retreat videos, as well as information. We haven't had our dates for 2025, but we're going to be coming out with those soon.
All right. And there's a question here from Key to Ministry. Can you explain how you incorporate different elements into your meditation at your retreat, such as water, air, sound?
Definitely include all the elements in the meditation. Like I said, that's the form of, intelligence to me. And you can always bring it back to the elements. The earth piece, we always connect with Mother Earth, literally, putting our feet to the earth, grounding so we can become balanced with that. So connecting, and through the breath work, doing some deep breath work and connecting to Mother Nature. And one of our, powerful pieces is just a mindfulness walk in nature and paying attention. We talked about looking at the sacred geometry within nature. Just so often we walk in nature and we're not even paying attention. Like we're thinking about what we're cooking for dinner, what's the next meeting, whatever. But to just sit and say like, wow, look at this tree, look at this, rock, how does this feel in my hand? To take that moment to be present, that's priceless for some of us that have busy lives. So we definitely connect with the earth element. We connect with the water element, understanding how everything is a vibration and how our intentions and words can impact water. I share a little bit about Dr. Moto's work and how water has, the properties to change depending on how we interact with it, right? The alchemy of water and how we can affect water. And I also, if I can, I try to go by the water as part of the retreat for us to connect with the divine wisdom of water. And we also do the air through the breath work, but also I like to, with the movement, how do we move our bodies and move in connection with the earth and air, and have flow? Because, I would say men and women, but especially for women, there's so much body shame and so much movement, like shame and how you move your body. So to have spaces where you feel liberated just to move where your spirit calls you to and explore the expansion of our body is so beautiful. And even with the body piece, brother recently we're talking, we saw a video and how much knowledge there is in our body. I think Western society is always about like head up, like, how much knowledge you have, go to school, get as much knowledge, but there's so much knowledge in our bodies, right? All our ancestors, they say we carry that as in ourselves. So there's so much
Yes.
information in ourselves and our I recently took this training on the trauma, the wisdom of trauma, and it's like we hold so much knowledge from head down. We never pay attention to that. So just the movement piece in air is so powerful, and our bodies tapping into the knowledge of our bodies. In that course, there was an exercise that we just held our hand on our chest and our back and held ourselves. And
Yeah.
it's crazy when you really just stop to like, what is my body telling me right now?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Facts, facts,
Sometimes
facts.
we have pain in our body. We're like, oh, it's whatever. But like, why? Why is this pain? It's always has an emotional source to it. So we do a lot of movement in air, and then fire, connecting with the element of fire in many ways, looking at it and understanding, how we can manifest fire, whether it's, through passion and aggression, or through also looking at it, how we can be the phoenix and what do we need to let go in the fire? How do we alchemize ourselves to change? So there's so many ways to connect with the elements, and we always do that. And I think the elements are universal, so they can connect with any human being, and you can find
Yeah.
a way to do that.
No, no, that's definitely a vibe. I know you wanted to share a poem before we cut.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, please do.
All right. So, folks that may not know, I am a poet. I'm a spoken word poet. I actually have a book of poetry, Essence, Tones, Whispers, and Shouts. And I think I told Brother Linton when I was at your event, I meditated that morning, and my spirit was like, say this poem. And, we had recently met. So I was like, I'm not sure if, this is the right moment. And I never said it. So I guess this is the right space. But talking about, the elements and alchemy, I think when I say my poems, I understand the intentions of my words. And it's, to me, it's almost like casting spells to individuals. So every poem I say, it's about bringing this word. And this one, Black Excellence, I wrote it for an event they had. It was a Black Excellence Gala, and I was really tapping into our ancestors and the knowledge base, the excellency that we have. And so often we don't hear that, right?
Right.
The deficit model of our history or what's going on in the media and the news. So my intention in this is just to remind folks like we are amazing. And, the worst thing we can do is that we think we're less than divine, and that's what others want us to think. So I will share this piece, and I hope that you can absorb every word. It's called Black Excellency. This is an ancestral drum call, a remembrance song, a soul serenade, a truth grenade, breaking away fear's barricades, detonating decades of deception, shattering the facade of unworthiness. Exhale the toxic fallacies of inferiority, hitting societal's pain threshold, levy conscious third eye opening, meditative water flow, wiping away racism's classified residue. Seafloor dive, inner wealth treasure knowing, doggone tribe mystery, pineal gland mastery. How can we be the inferiority of humanity when we carry the key to its legacy? We are culture's council, God artistry perfected, inhaling in luminous prisms of excellency, sacred geometry that expands infinity. Epic metaphysics, we are the pharaoh's prophecies. Galaxy sings within, dark matter source of magic, black birthplace of humanity, universally rooted in the brilliance of our melanin melody of tapestry, anatomy of alchemy, queen bee, king bee, colony of majesty. Cosmic directory immersed in every cell of our birth story.
golden milk legacy, dripping gold in each generation's dream reservoir, love source, a healing balm, salve of truth, savor our illuminating flavor, sugar cane suck, flawless light potion. We are human poetry. Victory is our heartbeat. Unity is our melody. Our lyrics can cast spells on cellular composition to form star formations or curses that can make alterations to our genius creations. So may we stand as tall as God formations in the united constellation of love, starseed creation, cometic sky, black fists in the air. So when they ask who we are, our reply is Black excellency, Black excellency, Black excellency.
Thank you so much for sharing and show some love in the comment section there for that wonderful presentation. Um, well, we truly give thanks for the reasoning. We give thanks for the teachings. We give thanks for the time. Can you let the people know where they can find you at online?
Sure. Social media, Eva B5, that's Eva with an I, so IVAB is in boy and the number 5. Also, you can go to my website again, Eva Brito, IVA, then Brito's BRITO. But if you go to Eva B5, and if you want to get a copy of the poem and audio file, if you go follow me, I'll send you a copy of the poem. Just send me a note and say resonate. If that poem resonated with you, hit me up and I'll send you a copy of the poem as well. Because I think it's powerful to hear those words, to remind yourself of our excellency and cast those spells for all our folks.
No, serious thing. And as I said, once again, we give thanks for you. We give thanks for everyone that tuned in. And till next time, all right, everyone stay safe.
Peace and blessings.